And we continue our coverage now, moving races for the Senate seat for District 16 for the state of Washington. Joined now by Perry Dozier. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you much for this opportunity.
First of all, I want to give a Senate candidate an opportunity to speak with an opening statement.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the most important thing about myself is I've been a lifelong resident of the 16th District. My wife and I have been in business partners for 40 years on our farm, and I've been a representative of the Washington Association of Wheat Growers, and then that was about 20 years ago, and went on and was a county commissioner for 8 years. I think that what I have is a very deep understanding of this district. My in-laws actually were in Franklin County. My mother-in-law grew up there in North Pasco, and they used to raise sheep, and then my father-in-law had ground there. I'm very strong for our economic development in schools, which I think is very important. I think K-12 education, we need to keep funding the way it is. I'm very, very happy to get this opportunity to move forward after being with the county commission and seeing a lot of what happens from Olympia coming down to us here and how it affects this 16th district. We have a very, very diverse 16th district, and spanning from Columbia County, Walla Walla County, Benton, and Franklin counties. And my strengths have been in agriculture over the years, but also in economic development and moving forward, I think, with the in Benton and Franklin County with the residential growth development. And my hopes are that once I am elected over there, I will be the voice that we need here in the 16th district for the people to move forward with our ideals and not have what happens in Olympia come down to really stifle us here or our economy here.
Thank you. And the first question I have for you, 2020 obviously has presented some pretty big issues when it comes to state budgets. What mix of actions do you believe need to be taken to close the budget gap for the next biennium?
Well, I think probably right off at the very beginning, which I am not a part of the state legislature, but I think once we got into shutting down the economy, I really think that there should have been some tax relief for our small businesses. These small businesses obviously have had to deal with a cash outflow, which has really strapped them. So we're moving through this period, and I think as we move into the new biennium budget, it's going to be very important that we remember that we cannot do unburdensome taxes on these businesses. It's the economy that's going to drive us moving forward. Getting people back to work is going to really be the driver for us in receiving those taxes that we have received before to supply those essential needs of us here in the state. And that probably is going to be the biggest focus that we have moving forward.
And question number two, state colleges and universities took a pretty big financial hit after the '08 recession, and the economic impact of the pandemic could maybe even have a greater effect. How important do you think it is for our state students to have access to affordable post-secondary education, and where might that money come from?
You know, I think that's a really good point. Both of my sons just graduated recently from Washington State University. And that is something that we have to continue. I talked about K-12, but I think beyond that, we need to make sure that these students have that ability to move forward with other education, whether it's tech school, whether it's going beyond. How we're going to fund that, that's going to be the biggest question, is because I think we have to fund the essential services that are there, and then we have to look at where we can make cuts elsewhere that are not as essential. And I don't want to say essential, non-essential, but where we can make cuts rather than trying to raise tuition. These students are already hurting with being able to find jobs. A lot of them have not been able to work. So we have to find where we can bring those dollars in from other areas to fund education for those students to move forward.
And a third question, more of a long-term one, looking forward 10, maybe 20 years. Do you foresee possible water shortages in Eastern Washington for both agriculture and for personal use? And if so, are there steps that could be taken to better prepare for that?
Well, water is become one of the biggest issues. When I've been an irrigated farmer for 30 years, and in our district, water is a very essential part of this entire district for irrigation. I've sat on two different boards that we've had to work with environmental groups and with the tribes to be able to supply water for farms, for families, and for fish. And I understand that extremely well. We have to address stream flows for the environment and for the fish, but we also have to protect those water rights for those individual farmers and for the municipalities that need that for their growth. And I have a long background in doing that when I worked with the city of Pasco and Franklin County, when Pasco was exploding in growth, going north, and we had farm ground that was converted into basically housing. And I worked with a lot of, with the Department of Ecology for 30 years on protecting our water rights. I think water is very, very scarce. It is the king of moving forward. A lot of times your water right is worth more than what your property is. And I understand that, and I will protect those rights, but protect the needs for everybody.
And before we go, 1 minute for your closing comments.
Okay, I think I am the most qualified candidate in this race for the 16th District Senate seat. I have the most experience in the district, living here my entire life. I have a lot of experience over in Olympia, and I have a lot of experience with public health, with the environment, with the economy. As a commissioner, I was a commissioner during the first recession in 2008 through 2010. And I want to take that experience over to Olympia because I have a desire to represent the people here and the needs that they have without overburdensome regulation or taxation, and to move this forward just like what we did 10 years ago. I feel that I can do that very well.
Perry Dozier, candidate for the Senate seat for District 16, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And continuing our look at the candidates for the Senate seat for District 16 in Washington State, joined now by Danielle Garby-Reeser. Danielle, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Well, sort of a non-conventional way of doing this candidate forum, but we do get an opportunity to hear from you, and we would like to hear if you have an opening statement.
Great. Thanks so much. Thank you, everyone. I'm Danielle Garby-Reeser. I'm running to bridge the divides between Eastern and Western Washington and our rural and urban communities. We need more common sense, fiscally responsible solutions in Olympia. I'm originally from Moses Lake and have fond memories of visiting the Tri-Cities to go to birthday parties at Chuck E. Cheese, and my first visit to Walla Walla, falling in love with the Whitman College campus and this beautiful community. I've dedicated my life to serving our country and our communities. My first day on the job was September 10th, 2001. My diplomatic career started by evacuating, and when we came back, I asked to be sent to the Muslim world. Whenever we faced challenges, I've stepped up to serve. And I very proudly served our country during the Bush and Obama administrations, in the White House and the Department of Energy for over 14 years. I think that global perspective is key to challenges facing our communities today. From the coronavirus to climate change to our agricultural exports, we need an international perspective in Olympia. But I missed home, so I moved back in 2015 and became the CEO of Sherwood Trust, a local foundation that invests to create jobs and build community infrastructure. We created partnerships with government, business, and nonprofits to tackle a range of challenges, from early learning to ending youth homelessness. And as we think about the challenges facing our community today, we need that kind of collaborative leadership and creative problem solving in Olympia to address healthcare, create more jobs, and improve our childcare system. And I'm also a farmer's wife, which means that I know the importance of stewarding our natural resources and making wise decisions for today and for future generations. I'm not a career politician. I'm a public servant, and I'd be honored to serve you.
And your first question, 2020 has presented, and future years will present some major issues when it comes to state budgets, of course. What mix of actions do you believe need to be taken to close the budget gap for this next biennium?
Thank you. It's such a critical issue that we need to address in our state, and we need to do it through a mix of solutions. We need to continue to ask the federal government for resources to support our cities and states and our overall comprehensive solution. We need to look at the rainy day fund. We need to consider where new spending that was approved this year may not be able to go forward. If we need to look at progressive revenue measures, we need to do those last. I'm not in favor of an income tax, but I am in favor of thinking through solutions that will look at the problem today, make smart budget decisions, and not defer or cut things so much that we're just creating more problems in the future. I think our comprehensive solution needs to bring our stakeholders to the table and look at ways that we can stimulate our economy with smart cuts and smart investments.
And question number two, state colleges and universities took a big financial hit after the 2008 recession. Some forecasts say the economic impact of this pandemic could be even greater. How important do you think it is for the state students to have access to affordable post-secondary education? And where might money for that come from?
Right. It's such a critical way that we can stimulate our economies by having a strong economic system fueled by our education system. And that's from a variety of levels, all the way from early learning, K through 12, but also this important post-secondary space. We've, as you said, looked at our state system. We have two amazing community colleges here in the 16th LD, in CBC and Walla Walla Community College. They need our help to stay strong and make sure that they can help workers retrain for the jobs of the future, and that the curriculum they're offering provides 21st century skills. We also need to make sure that other pathways are open to our students by supporting apprenticeship programs with unions, for example. There are all kinds of ways that we can look at how we support that system and keep it open to a broad diversity of people across our communities and of all ages.
And a long-term question here, looking forward 10, maybe even 20 years. Do you foresee possible water shortages in Eastern Washington for both agriculture and personal use? And if so, are there steps that could be taken to better prepare for that?
Water is absolutely critical to our region. And I can tell you from our family's farm that we have creeks and streams that now go dry. So it's not just a future problem of drought, it's a current problem. We've had really extreme weather this year, major flooding, as well as major droughts. And looking at comprehensive solutions to water management is key. We've seen challenges to people wanting to bottle and sell their water. We've seen private equity firms wanting to come in and buy our water rights. We need to make sure that we're addressing water from a fairness standpoint as well as a regulatory issue, so that farms like ours that have senior water rights are respected. We shouldn't see dry creeks that just lead to fish loss and habitat loss, as well as damage to our crops and our agricultural system. So as we think about the water that we need both for agriculture and our economy, as well as you said, for personal use in our communities, we need to take a sustainable approach that brings all the stakeholders together and really looks at the long-term planning needs.
And before we let you go, an opportunity here for 1 minute of closing comments.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Matt, to Northwest Public Broadcasting and the League of Women Voters of Benton, Franklin County for bringing us together today. It's so wonderful to get to celebrate this part of the campaign with the League of Women Voters, because this year marks 100 years since women earned the right to vote and 55 years since the Voting Rights Act. It's critical that we are informed and engaged citizens. Today, I'm asking for your vote. I'm also asking you to vote. It's so critical that we all participate in the August 4th primary. I'm running because I want to fight for Eastern Washington. I love this region, and I want us to have a fair shake in Olympia. If you're interested in learning more and potentially joining our team, I invite you to visit our website, garbyreeser.com. Together, we can build a very bright future for Eastern Washington and the 16th LD.
Danielle Garby-Reeser, candidate for the 16th Legislative District. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Matt.
And continuing our look at the candidates for the 16th Legislative District for the state Senate seat, we are now joined by Bill Jenkin. Bill, thank you very much for being here.
Well, thank you for having us and doing this for all the candidates. It's important to get our names out there.
It's certainly a unique set of circumstances that brings this forum together, but luckily we are able to reach you over the phone. First off, we're giving our candidates an opportunity to deliver a 2-minute opening statement.
Okay, yep, I'd love to do that. So basically, I got into the race. I was going to stay in the House because I thought getting a lot of work done, but then I was approached by Senator Michael Patton in the Senate, of course, and he was saying that I should run. So I thought about it, talked to my wife, and decided that I can be much more effective in the Senate. I can utilize my experience that I've gained, and I've gained a lot of it. I've been able to build relationships. I've been able to go into leadership in the House as far as Deputy Sergeant at Arms, and also was named to be the ranking member on the Housing Committee. The committees I've served on is going to bring a whole lot to the district. This year being on capital budget, as well as the Housing Committee, of course. I've always served for all 4 years on the Commerce and Gaming because I own a winery, and there's a lot of wineries, a lot of grapes and that type of thing in the district. They also asked me to serve on the new tourism committee for the state because of that exposure. Also the census and the economic development and international relations committees. So I've worked with both sides. I have common sense legislation, was able to get 4 bills through this, and they're all common sense bills this biennium. I know the entire district needs to be served. I'm a business owner, past school board president, past Rotary District governor, Chamber of Commerce president twice, and I've been endorsed by, our treasurer, Dwayne Davison, senators, House members, mayors, council members, and sheriffs throughout the district, and they've seen that I've been able to be effective, and that's what I want to continue to do.
Well, we'll start with our few questions. First question has to do with budgets. 2020 has presented some major issues when it comes to state budgets. What mix of actions do you believe need to be taken to close the budget gap for the next biennium? Well,
$8 billion, maybe $9 billion is a lot of money to make up. And that's what we're going to have to do. And it's going to take proven leadership to do that and experience to do that. We have constitution. We have to fund schools. K through 12 is over 50% of the budget right there. And then there's other things in the budget that we have to. So that just leaves a little bit on the perimeters that we can try to make up that. We certainly can't have any taxes to do it. And that's why we need to get back to work so that we can start getting a budget surplus again. We're going to have close to $4 billion worth of surplus, and then this COVID hit. So we've got to get back to work. We've got to open up the budget. We can get that revenue without having to pay the taxes and the people making up the differences. So budget is going to be the top thing here. If there is a special session, I'm sure that's what we're going to be discussing a whole lot.
And state colleges and universities certainly took a big hit after the 2008 recession. Some forecasts thinking that this pandemic could have an even greater impact. How important is it for our state students to have access to affordable post-secondary education, and where might that money come from?
Well, post-secondary is important. We've and they've been hit hard. It's the higher education. That's one of my biggest concerns with this budgetary because they're on the chopping block. And I've talked to a lot of administrators, presidents, and that type of thing from different universities and our community colleges, which do a fantastic job. I believe that all the kids should have the opportunity to go to higher education. Not all of them want to, and not all of them should be forced to go, because we do need a lot of help as far as our trade schools and that type of thing to train them. So we've got to leave all the doors open, but we shouldn't shut any of them due to the budget.
And finally, a longer term question here, looking forward 10 or even 20 years, do you foresee possible water shortages in Eastern Washington for both agriculture and personal use? And if so, are there steps that could be done to better prepare?
Yeah, that's what's going on right now in the 16th district, primarily in the Walla Walla area with the Walla Walla watershed. Department of Ecology has come in and they're doing a different plan, and it's going to be a lot like the Yakima Valley plan was or is. And so I can see that happening. I can see already in Walla Walla there's meters on the wells and that type of thing, and that same thing in Yakima. I would hate to see meters on all the wells, but I see that that's going to most likely happen as time goes on. We need to create as many sources to be able to get water as possible. Last year, 2 years ago, I worked on a DNR bill that enabled some water to come up to Horseheaven Hills up in the Patterson area. And so they were able to get some water off of the Columbia River so that they would be able to grow different type crops other than dryland wheat.
And finally, before we let you go, an opportunity to make a closing statement with 1 minute.
Yeah, you bet. Well, I'm the only candidate in this race with current legislative experience. Period. 4 years. I've worked the entire district. I know the entire district, and every little bit. It's from Prosser all the way to Columbia County, Dayton, and into the Blue Mountains. Every district, every part of the district is different. So I know what needs to be done. I know the people that are working in those areas. Most of them have endorsed me. I work with common sense, like I said before, and I think everything is reasonable. I've got plenty of endorsement, but the one endorsement that I need are the voters' endorsements, and I hope to get that. I'm working hard towards that, and will continue to do so once I'm elected. I ask for your vote.
And that's Bill Jenkin, candidate for the State Legislative District 16 for that Senate seat. Bill, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time and your willingness to do this.